something for those that pay attention to detail. What is the difference between facts and reality? Do you have to be realistic for fact's sake, or factual for reality's sake? Is it possible to be transparently relevant yet unrealistic, or factually relevant yet realistic? There's an irony.
Interesting. I think that facts are irrefutable, and reality can only be a product of facts. For instance, a scientific fact cannot be manipulated such that it does not hold true. We can only be able to act within the confines of that fact. For instance, if you think of gravity, that is a scientific fact, and the reality of us being able to escape gravity can only be achieved if we recognize that fact and create realistic plans that can be able to enable us to exit gravity, but without refuting the fundamental principles in which gravity is defined. Yet you also note that in many respects, facts are also contextual. This does not entail that they lose their value per se, but that there are specific contexts in which a fact might not hold true. A point in question where this holds true would be in quantum physics, for instance. If we were to use the principle of the Coulombic attraction, it would not be possible for an atom to have a nucleus and electrons permanently revolving around that nucleus, because the Coulombic attraction will tell you that if there are two different charges, that is the positive and negative, the relationship between those two charges will be one of attraction. So which means that in such an instance, the Coulombic attraction does not hold true, because atoms actually do exist in that state, but without having a relationship of attraction. So it's quite interesting how facts shape reality, yet the fundamentals in which those facts are based are heavily dependent on the context in which that fact is being assessed.
Don't you think that facts are also subjective? In the sense that when you look at scientific facts, they're subjective to a confined limitation, which means that when you come to a certain principle, that principle has been measurable to that degree of it being confined, which makes it eligible to refinement at later centuries or later years, which is why you find out that scientifically what was accepted centuries ago has now become obsolete and irrelevant. So when you come to reality, it then becomes a problem in terms of what becomes reality at one point may also become obsolete at another, which confuses me in terms of effect and reality. Are we coming to a conclusion that there is no reality without facts? Can we safely say that? Further, the contextual application of facts is something that we need to pay close attention to. because some are considered as facts based on a context that is not factual, because there is a very thin line between what a fact is and what looks like a fact and has been made to be a fact. This is very common in the medical fraternity or in the pharmaceutical industry. You are made to believe something. Fear is being impregnated to you, and you buy into that idea or theory. Yet, in actuality, it's not a fact. It is something that is made to seem to be a fact. Laws, legislations being made in the process, and people are made to accept it as a fact. Yet it's not a fact. But the reality behind it is being made to be a fear of the unknown. So we need to be very careful in terms of what we consider as a fact vis-a-vis what is actually on the ground as reality. So the line of demarcation is very slim, but also we cannot run away from the fact that there is propaganda, there is politics, there is a lot of things that are involved when we come in and look at this subject. I don't know what you think there. In the medical context, for example, a disease can be created, right? And then can be made to be a fact that that disease is dangerous. But the reality behind is that actually that disease is not dangerous, but the medication that you can be given to curb that disease is even more dangerous. And when you have that medication, it's going to make you to want to consistently take that medication in order for you not to suffer from that disease which has been made to be very dangerous. So what is the fact? The fact is that the agenda that has been pushed behind is such that you can get to buy more of that medication to boost the pharmaceutical industry. But the reality behind, as being portrayed in the media, is that the disease is dangerous. Yet in actuality, the real reality being the fact that what's more dangerous is the medication. So there is an irony, my brother, there, especially when you bring in that example of a scientific evidence. Science comes in with assumed facts because there's a lot of knowledge behind science. But as I've said, assumed facts. So this is a problem.
That's quite interesting. What you're saying, especially about propaganda and the like, how they could directly influence what society presumes is a fact. I'd like to chip in on that one with an example of Elon Musk. When Elon initially proposed reusable rocket boosters, he was told that it's not scientifically sound because the environment of the ozone layer is very toxic, such that it's not possible for a rocket booster to be launched, come back to Earth, and be launched again. And if he had used those assessments that were based on rocket designs that were already existing, it's very true that those assumed facts would have acted as a limitation. But rather, he had to think of the problem in terms of first principles. Because you cannot understand the level at which an aspect is factual if you don't think of it in terms of its fundamental scientific principles. And only when you think in terms of first principles can you be able to be exposed to limitations that are irrefutable.
Well, my brother, this is quite interesting, but the reality is that real facts are always and must always be in harmony with reality, right? By their very definition, uh, it is often a misunderstanding of facts that lead to the seeming indiscrepancy. Let me give you an example by citing the brother who gave the example in quantum physics, right, of the positive and negative charges. It is true that the positive and negative charges always attract. This is an established fact in physics, irrespective of context, as the brother was purporting to put it across. You see, the question becomes what then happens in an electron or in an atom. Uh, there are two forces at play there. There's one force called the centripetal force. This force is the one that causes the electron to revolve around the positive nucleus. The electron is negative, the nucleus is positive. So one can say they should attract. In other words, the atom should collapse, but that does not happen because of the centripetal force. The force prevents the 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 negative electron to be attracted towards the negative the positive nucleus. Okay, so the reality is that uh, the laws of attraction still holds in that instance, even if it seems not to, right? Hence, effects represent the truth about events as opposed to their interpretation. This must be true. This must be always hold true for all scientific facts. Okay, that is always true. But uh, let me say there's isolated incidences. Okay, there's isolated incidences where okay that seem to challenge. Uh, in fact, that actually challenges non-scientific facts. These events are real, yes, but cannot always be explained in scientific facts. We cannot call them. We cannot call them. Okay, we can just call them supernatural. Okay. Um, for example, Peter walking on top of the water. We can't explain that by real scientific facts, can we? But yet the event is real. Peter did defy gravity. Okay. So the conclusion of the matter is that uh, facts are always real. Okay. Yet reality can't always be factual. The one can exist without the other, yet the other still has a self propagating life of its own. In the final analysis, we can say reality is the queen mother that gave birth to facts and does not really need facts to survive. Okay, she can survive on her own. She can defy her daughter facts at any time and still survive and still be as real as it gets. That's my conclusion.
We will then have a problem there because not everything that is factual has scientific background in terms of its fundamental principles. Not everything that is factual has that scientific background because you seem to be limiting it to scientific background. Anything that comes to existence as being realistic and factual. We'll have a problem there because there are some incidents that have no scientific explanation yet they are factual. How do we coin in those incidences, for example? Based on your last conclusion, you say that facts can be real, but reality is often independent of facts. As in, reality is the queen mother of facts and can exist independent of facts. Okay, that's a heavy assessment, my brother. However, my question is based on the example that you gave of Peter walking on water. It was real, but then you said that it cannot be factually assessed scientifically. True, scientifically cannot be factually assessed. However, does that mean we are limiting our understanding of what we term facts based on scientific knowledge? Are we narrowing down our definition of what a fact is based on scientific knowledge? If it is so, what you're saying is correct. If it is not so, then it means that it was not a fact based on science, but based on another domain outside science. It was a fact. It was a real fact. Yeah.
Yes, my brother. It is true. We cannot limit facts to entirely only science. I only narrowed down my definition to fit the context of the exchange that you were having with the brother. So, as it is a fact that Peter walked on top of the water, it was also real, to those who beheld or who witnessed the event. In other words, their sense of sight could detect, perceive, identify Peter is walking on top of the water. Sight being scientific by nature, we can conclude that the event was real. But there was also another scientific phenomenon, okay, called gravity, which made the event seem unreal because it defied the gravity fact. Jesus also walked on water, right? And onlookers thought they were seeing a ghost. Why? Because even if they didn't know the definition of gravity as we know it today, to them it was unreal. In other words, not true to them then known facts, whether scientific or from another realm. Well, except of course, unless he was a ghost. I'm sure you can now see that when trying to explain facts, one cannot entirely strip away science. Facts themselves, in other words, have to be observable, at least by or through one of the senses. Okay, one of the five senses, and they also have to be provable. Well, at least from the scientific or from the strictest definition of facts. Okay, so but reality, however, do not need to wait for facts to be observable, okay, or provable in order to be. You and I, okay, for example, may not have seen God as a matter of fact, but in reality, God exists. God is there. Hence, you can see my conclusion, that reality exists despite the facts.